station, Radio Gold 90.5 FM. And you are welcome to Alhaji and Alhaji. Remember, it is on every Saturday, and we come to your various homes right from here. As today being one of those wonderful Saturdays, wonderful because I've already given you indications from Thursday and Friday that this weekend or today is actually the Home Award celebrations for folks inside Gamashi, and so today's Alhaji and Alhaji show is basically going to be one that will be in a celebration mood for that matter. And congratulations, of course, to all those in Gamashi and everyone celebrating their Home Award today. My name is Peter Bamfo, and I'd like to welcome you specially to today's edition of the show. As you know, this show is one that requires you at home doing the listening to participate fully via our WhatsApp line. And so do well to be an active listener and not just a passive one. I will go through the headlines of the papers, after which I would look at the issues that we'll be discussing, and then we'll go for a break. When we return, I'll introduce my discussants who are going to help me to do justice to the issues that we have in front of us. Meanwhile, you're reminded also that this show is sponsored by Ines Fly and Apollonia City. Now, Ines Fly says bed bugs are dangerous pests that cause sleeplessness, tiredness, body rashes, anemia due to blood loss, and general discomfort to humans. Unfortunately, they are so difficult to get rid of. They spread in mattresses, pillows, bags, lockers, clothes, and even in hidden places. They must be dealt with. Choose Ines Fly bed bug solution to get rid of the bed bugs easily. The Ines Fly bed bug solution exterminates bed bugs, dealing with minor and major infestations, effective for up to 6 weeks, and is safe for humans. Spread the bed bugs out today. Spray the bed bugs out today with the Ines Fly bed bug solutions. Ines Fly recommends thorough treatment with the 10-liter ready-to-go or ready-to-use EM house solution for institutions and households with a high infestation. For bulk purchase, call 0577 701 000. Ines Fly, beautiful protection. The headlines of the papers I have received in front of me today. I'll start off with the Spectator newspaper. Says pastor family fight over dead body. Mrs. Selma Amin Bonsu, new phase of Amen Herbal Center. Marry me or I will kill you is also a story captured on the front page of the Spectator newspaper. Daily Guide says UT boss speaks out over 5 million Ghana cedi cash. Remember, this week has been all on the issue of the collapsed bank, or what I would say the consolidated banks, and those that have been taking over. We have had responses from the Pastor Mensa Otabil, Reverend Pastor Mensa Otabil. We've also heard from the former chief executive of UT, Prince Kofi Amwabeng, and what he has also been saying. J.H. Mensah laid to rest at Burma camp, and this morning, on behalf of the production team, would like to extend condolences to the family of the late J.H. Mensah, and to pray that God himself, who has called him, will find him a perfect place to rest. Katanga student storm Mensah Palace, and man sexually assaults 10-year-old daughter. The Ghanaian Times says police ordered to shoot anyone who attacks them, and the story is attributed to the district chief executive for the Asunas for South, districts in the Brong-Ahafo region, making that order, giving that order to the police that anyone who attempts to attack them, they should make sure they shoot at that person. I'm not too sure what will cause him to say that. KNUST Katanga students demo against conversion of halls, and JH Mensah laid to rest. Court grants Kandahar boys leader bail. Driver jailed 12 years for defiling girl 14, and demolitions of to protect river sparks row in Kenya. Finally, the Daily Graphic newspaper, very disturbing story indeed, a very, very disturbing one. 2 beauty contestants drown during photo shoot. One still missing, and I'll just read a bit of that story. I mean, 2 students, stories on page 3 of the papers done by Shelley Eduardo. It says 2 students got drowned after they were struck by a strong wave. The disaster occurred while they were taking photographs as part of the phase of USAC beauty contest at the Oasis Beach restaurant in Cape Coast last Thursday evening. The body of one of the students has been recovered, while the second person is yet to be found. Very, very disturbing story indeed. Don't spend too much time on the dead. Bishop Palmer Buckle delivering this at the funeral service or the burial service of the late J.H. Mensah. And work on Accra Nsawam Railway progresses. That's all the stories you have on the front page of the Daily Graphic newspaper. Now, news reaching us here at Radio Gold has it that the former UN Secretary General and the founder also of the Kofi Annan Foundation, Kofi Annan, has passed on. We're still trying to get details of this very sad news we're getting. It occurred in Switzerland, we are told. But we'll bring you details or more on this particular breaking story that the former UN Secretary General, Dr. Kofi Annan, has passed on to glory. Now, today we are going to be looking at the collapse of Capital Bank and UT Bank, and the various statements that have come. We have seen, or we have read that from Pastor Mensah Otabil, and we've also read that from Mr. Prince Kofi Amwabing, the former chairman of UT. We're also going to be looking at the attack on the CEO, the acting CEO of the Tamale Teaching Hospital by the Kandahar boys, and its related matters. And then thirdly, we'll discuss the issue of government of Ghana and FIFA's umpires, and let's see what decisions that they have actually come to and how it's going to benefit both parties. And if we have time, we'll also take some optional comments as well. We're going for a quick break. When we come back, I will introduce my discussants for this morning, and then we can proceed with the conversation. The name once again is Peter Bamfo, and the show is Alhaji and Alhaji, live on GFM radio in London and across our affiliates nationwide. You can join us on the show by sending us your messages, and I will read them out to you. I've already given you the indication that news reaching us here at Radio Gold has said that former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan has passed on. The WhatsApp line this morning is 0233 995 995 905 0233 995 905. My guest this morning Ambassador Sam P. Yale is former Ghana's High Commissioner to India. Professor Ninoy Dowuna is a senior lecturer at the University of Ghana. We're still expecting him to join us pretty soon. Comrade Mutala Ibrahim Mohammed, he's a former Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry and former Member of Parliament for the Nanton constituency in the Nosing region. And Mr. Kwesi Pratt Jr., Comrade Kwesi Pratt Jr., Managing Editor of the Insight newspaper, and also a senior convener of the Socialist Forum of Ghana. They are going to help me this morning to do justice to the topics that I have already given you. But I'll go through the topics once again. This morning we're going to do a thorough discussion of the case of Capital Bank's collapse and the statement that has come from the former board chairman of the bank, Pastor Mensa Otabil, that he is not responsible for the collapse of the bank. The IOCO investigating directors of the 5 collapsed banks and its related matters. Mind you, I've already given you indication also that the former chair of UT Bank, Kofi Amoabeng, has also issued a statement trying to justify that 5 million Ghana cedi claim which has been reported in the Builders document. We'll also do a critical analysis of the attack on the Chief Executive Officer of the Tamale Teaching Hospital by the Kandahar boys, the strike of health workers in solidarity, and reactions, of course, from the New Patriotic Party and its allied concerns. Thirdly, we'll also look at the government of Ghana and FIFA impasse and government's position that we won't compromise our sovereignty, as well as the resolution to streamline football activities in Ghana by FIFA and government of Ghana. And when we have time, we'll take some optional speeches or comments from our discussants over here. And so welcome once again to the show. We're live on GFM Radio, and for those of you on TuneIn, you can get Radio Gold 90.5, and you listen to the show live from here. We're also live on PAB MCGH on Facebook. That's for those of you who are on Facebook. And so we'll zoom in straight into our conversation for this morning. And I'll start with you, former Ghana's High Commissioner to India, Ambassador Sam P. Yale. Of course, maybe you would like to take a minute to pay some tribute to the memory of Dr. Kofi Annan.
Well, this morning, just as I got into my car to drive here, I was called and told that, have you heard that His Excellency Kofi Annan has passed on? I said, no, that could not be the case, because as recently as about 2 weeks, he had issued a statement on Sudan. And so I decided to sit in my car and go to Google. And then they had posted, UN has posted 4 minutes ago that he's passed on. And in fact, it's becoming one too many that Ghana is losing its top senior citizens. Only yesterday we buried Mr. J. Mensah. A couple of weeks ago we had buried the vice president. And somebody is also saying, why Central Region, we are also losing too many of your top people. I said, well, that's our lot. But it's unfortunate that the single iconic figure that's on the international screen that we see of Ghana is Kofi Annan. Now, elsewhere, when you mention that you are from Ghana, the first thing they tell you is Kofi Annan. Then say yes. Then the next thing is Black Star. So these are the two things that Ghana is identified with. Save that in recent times we have been associated with corruption. So vigilantism. So these are the things that it's painful that we are losing such our iconic figures. It's a prayer that the family will be consoled, and those of us from the Central Region who our children looked onto Kofi Annan for inspiration, we'll quickly bring ourselves together to see what we can do to replace such a figure. Peter, quite frankly, I don't want to discuss the personalities involved in this banking crisis. I call it banking crisis. and for any country or government that supervises the collapse of 7 banks in a trot. It's a very serious, very, very serious issue which nobody should downplay it at all. It doesn't matter who caused the banking sector crisis. Now, again, I want to say that banking crisis or collapse of banks is not new in the banking world. And many, many reasons account for bank failures. Many, many reasons. But if you look at the 2003 bank failures in the US, the whole world zoomed on unethical behavior of directors. So in this instance that we are having in Ghana, we need to, as a matter of fact, differentiate between the politics, differentiate between the conduct of the personalities involved, and look at the economy itself and see what effect this banking crisis would have on our economy. Now, way back in Rollins' early days and Achampong's early days, Mutala, that we exchange currency. And the exchange of the currency was not done in a very professional manner. So many, many people lost their money. And so, to date, many people don't feel comfortable putting their money in the bank. So you see that our rate of savings in the financial sector is very, very, very low. That accounts for the banks having to go always borrowing money to as it were, run their businesses. The culture of putting money in the bank is not there. So for this collapse to also add to our suspicion and disdain for banking, it's a very worrisome and terrible situation that the Bank of Ghana must be worried rather than playing politics with it. Thirdly, the rise of this money market, money transfers, this whatever they call them, it's also taking retail banking outside the banking hall. Today, as I sit with you and I want to transfer money to you, all I do is go take my phone and transfer it to you. So then actual retail banking is also in crisis, and we have to take a look at that. But unfortunately, we don't have a finance ministry that has its head screwed on its neck. We don't have a good Bank of Ghana, a proper Bank of Ghana regulatory authority in place. I listened to Anabo Adongo, and he was analyzing this before I came here. Bank of Ghana as an institution should be insulated from any political machinations. And the moment you extend your political tentacles there, you're going to create more problems for us. Now, let us look at some of the causes of bank failures in the world, even in Ghana. One of them is bank run. When the economy is that bad, that people believe that instead of saving money, they go withdrawing the money regularly. So today, Peter, you see that many people don't go and put money in the bank. They rather go there regularly to withdraw money because the economy is that hard, difficult. So when that happens, you see that the capital requirements of the reserves of the bank will be going down because of the bank run. The other thing is speculation. When there's speculation that bank is not doing well, then people also run in for money. And that is why it was very dangerous for the MPP to use the DKM, debacle as political issue. Because as soon as that happened, many people started withdrawing their money from the microfinances companies, and rather put it on their phone. And that is disturbing because the microfinance companies were there to service the SMEs, the small and medium scale enterprises. So immediately they started playing politics with the DKM issue. People started withdrawing their monies from the micro level financing company. So that is one of the reasons why banking institutions collapse, the bank run. Now, leverages. Baumia has introduced something called leverage, but people don't understand what a leverage actually means in banking terms. You have your investment. A bank doesn't have all the money it has. What it does is it collects deposit from people, and then the deposit that it has keeps some for current retail banking, and the rest in investment. So at any time that a bank says that, let's say Ghana Commercial Bank leverages money to, let's say, NIB, that will be at a very high rate, because the NIB does not have the money liquidity sufficiency now. So you go to commercial bank and so, these are my investment. Okay, can you give me this amount of loan so that I can do my retail banking? And that usually is at a very high cost. So it is not just leveraging is another term for borrowing. No, it's a amount of taking a loan at a higher risk, because of your investment. This is what is happening in the banking sector. You see the banks competing among themselves to build the most beautiful offices, the most beautiful cars for their directors. You understand? They do this at the expense of retail banking. And the bank survival actually is one who comes to deposit money and who comes to withdraw money. But then if the money goes into physical infrastructures and there's stocks, daily turnover is very low. And then as soon as people go to start queuing in a bank for waiting for their deposit, then there's a problem. Now, the other issue that I have seen to be the problem with the banking sector is that lack of regulatory supervision. The last time, Peter, I was here saying that the Bank of Ghana should ban its staff from being on the boards of private organizations. They do that with the intention that they will give feedback report as some irregularities taking place. But to date, I'm challenging any Bank of Ghana representative on a board of any of the private institutions that has sent any adverse report on the operations of the bank until the bank collapses. You understand? Especially when they are going on retirement. You see them doing things, and then as soon as they retire, they are the chief executives for these private banks. They are the board chairman of this bank. So that compromises their authority as regulators. I see what I'm saying. Now, the other issue is that every banking institution is supposed to subject itself to auditing, periodic auditing by the Bank of Ghana. So if the audit report does not reveal that there's a problem going on and the bank collapses immediately, it means that the auditing has been badly done. And what I have learned is that some of these banks pay the auditors not to give accurate reports until the matter is bad enough to send the bank's belly up. So the auditors of the Bank of Ghana on these collapsed banks must be asked questions. You follow what I'm saying? But they must be asked questions as to why they sat down to see that over the years this bank is not surviving properly, then it collapsed. Peter, I've spoken about the economic situation that asks people to, but above all, the unethical behavior and misconduct of boards. Every board is established with a mandate. The mandate is to ensure, supervise, regulate the institution. And therefore, you carry a certain liability as a board member or as a board chairman. Because it is for you to ensure that the managing director and the staff are doing things properly. You understand? Your role is not just to go and sit there, drink tea in the morning, serve with cognac, and then when you are going, a beautiful lady comes, give you an envelope in your car, and that is the role you are playing as a bank governor. I have seen board members who never read their report. They just come and sit there because they don't understand the issue they are even talking about. It is for this reason that we should not politicize boards in this country. Even in my own NDC time, I saw some of them. Some meter readers, ordinary people sitting on National Petroleum Authority. What did they understand about the issues there? Economic teams, they were sitting there. It is not the problem of NDC or MPP. It is a national problem. You don't send people who don't know anything or know next to nothing to go and sit on boards, because the boards have a typical role to play. So the selection of members to a board is very, very, very important. But over here in this country, some PLA talks on radio for MDC, and therefore we have won election. Put him on a board. he has Mutala has gone to retirement, put him on a board. You see, we are sacrificing the integrity of such crucial financial institution. And both NDC and NPP are advised that if we go that way, we shall collapse our banking system. My worry is this, Mr. Peter Banfu. This Bank of Ghana governor, is he not ashamed that in his tenure of office the banks are collapsing? Is he not ashamed? He takes so much pride saying that this bank is collapsed, I've withdrawn the license. Is he not ashamed? Even so, when a few months ago, he's the one that inaugurated the banks, those banks with pomp and pageantry, and then 5 months or so later, the banks collapse.
They are sanitizing the system.
Sanitizing indeed. Peter, sanitizing indeed. When a bank applies for a license, you first give it a provisional license. You know the essence of the provisional license, so that you would investigate all the claims he has put on the application. For example, if he says that he has a capital of so much money as a capital for Sampi Yale and so much for Honorable Kwesi Pratt, what you do is that go beyond and check whether Kwesi Pratt has the capacity to raise that money. From whether Sampi Yale has the capacity, maybe it's money laundering. Some shamelessly go to another bank, borrow money at high interest rate, and then put it as what? Their capital for the banks. The Bank of Ghana governor is the one who receives this application, causes the people to do investigations, and gives an approval. Only to turn around 5 months to say that the people didn't give you right information. What kind of a public officer are you? What kind of a public officer are you? Who would accept people's documentation within 5 months and then collapse the same institutions? You know, the Bank of Ghana, I think that the management there should be dissolved for new ones to be put in place. Because Dr. Addison is a monumental failure. You remember that the issues came about as a result of the Bank of Ghana giving the figures or not, the right figures or not. We wrote to the Bank of Ghana, you are a professional group, isn't it? Come out professionally and say that the figures are this and it's not like this. But because of politics, Bank of Ghana didn't say anything. And then we wrote on and on and on and on. I think the Bank of Ghana governor should, immediately the first bank collapse, should have resigned. Because that's a failure of his office. He should have resigned. And I call on him to resign honorably so that a more competent person should be put at the Bank of Ghana. Because he's playing politics instead of doing the work of a regulator. Because a regulator that supervises the collapse of institutions under you is a bad regulator.
Even when the institutions are not working.
That's the reason why you are the regulator. Are you following what I'm saying? First and foremost, you don't allow people who are not functioning well into the field. First and foremost, you do that. That's why there's some application processes and investigation to be done. All right. Now, when individuals in the organization present people who are not qualified enough, because there are some qualifications that have to be fulfilled. You understand? You don't accept somebody's qualification just because he's the president of the Methodist Church. You don't accept that because his competency is not in banking and what? Finance. His competency is in preaching the word of God. So you put this man on your board and he doesn't see anything and the bank collapses and then you hold him responsible. So the regulatory functions of the Bank of Ghana has failed the system. That's my point. And therefore the Bank of Ghana itself should be ashamed about its auditors that they sent to the field to go and investigate and didn't give any indication until the banks collapsed. Peter, what you are dealing with is not an easy thing because following the failure, you know the number of workers that have been sent home. You know the number of workers that have been sent home. The MPP claims it to be a business-friendly organization, but unfortunately, it is under MPP that these businesses, which are privately owned by Ghanaians, are collapsing. Do you see the irony? It is under this MPP government, which claims to be business-friendly, that these banks are collapsing. And the rate at which they are collapsing is alarming. I am sure some of them are still on the line. And apart from the job losses, Peter, you know that once the Ghana Commercial Bank has absorbed these organizations, you and I are going to pay for that the nonsense that the people have created from the taxpayers' money, because they cannot say that they won't give the depositors their money. And the government has to bail these banks. And the government doesn't have money of its own. They are coming from our taxes. So what country are we running? What kind of country are we running? I'm saying that I said that I'm not going to depend on the persons that are involved, Amwabin and Pastor Mensa Otabil. Because if the regulator was up and doing, he wouldn't have come to this. Peter, you remember that some time ago, the whole country was on me as the NPRA regulator, that I was not giving pension money to some people. You know why? Because I investigated these young people. I said, no, I cannot entrust people's pensions money, which is their last resort, to people like that. They made politics, but I stood my ground. And thank God today, the pension industry is what is that. That's what a regulator does. Stand your ground and say, no matter who this person is, I won't grant him the license. But you grant a license to the person, 5 months down the line, the thing collapses. You understand? As for the response by Dr. Mensa Otabil, it is an apology. Dr. Mensa Otabil, my advice to you is that you yourself has admitted, and in one of your preachings, that you may be good in preaching the word of God, and have ventured into areas where you are not good at. Please, whoever crafted that statement for you, please sack him. That statement is of no essence. It did not solve the problem. It did not explain your role. It did not do anything apart from just saying that Pastor Mensa Otabil has also spoken. You understand? This matter is not a matter of press releases. It's a matter of economic investigation. One parliament would have to call Bank of Ghana governor for him to come and explain why the regulatory framework has collapsed. The parliament should call Bank of Ghana to bring audit reports on these banks for the past 2 years to see what kind of report its members have been given. The Bank of Ghana, apart from audit, also has members on the Security and Exchange Commission. You know, they should investigate what kind of work these people are doing, because for all you know, they are conniving and condoning for these things to happen. But I am saying that the effect of this bank collapse has many ramifications for this economy. One, because people are going to lose more confidence in the banking system, which is dangerous, because the banks have to mobilize resources for the development of this country. And then people keep their money under mattresses, or people find it easy that anytime I have money, I'm going to change dollars. But are you following what I'm saying? They're going to change dollars. So very soon you see the dollars, all the dollars in the country being mobbed into people's homes. And the effect of it, all of us will feel it. You know, again, anytime a bank fails, thousands of people lose their livelihood. They lose their livelihood. If your mother or father was working in the bank, you are in the school, then for the following day he's not unemployed. What is he? He was just a clerk in the bank. How are you going to go to school? You know, so again, government should review membership of all the boards of these organizations, because it's possible that there are crooks, money launderers in this field. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Sampi Yale, there for your submission. Let me come to you, Comrade Mujala, for your submission. And again, you would spend a minute to pay tribute to the memory of the late His Excellency Kofi Annan. Whichever way.
Well, I agree with you. I think that we have lost an icon. I just want to disagree with my uncle, Ambassador Piale, that it is not only the youth in Central Region who will be looking, or who were looking up to him as a source of inspiration. I believe that the entire continent of Africa, young people, and to a very large extent globally, looked up to, Mr. Kofi Annan as a source of inspiration. I mean, he served in the highest political office ever. He served as a UN Secretary General. This was a diplomat who served in several capacities, representing not just himself or his family, but I believe that his representation was a symbol of admiration and pride for Ghana and for Africa. If I'm not mistaken, he would be the first African in sub-Saharan Africa, except Bitrus Ghali, who was partly, Egyptian. But in sub-Saharan Africa, Kofi Annan was the first, if you like, you can say, black man who served in the UN as a secretary general, fully blooded. Butrus Gali had, half Egyptian and I think half, I don't know which country he was coming from. Whatever the case is, he served as inspiration to many people, particularly in Africa. And of course, Ghana would have to take credit. And I do understand where Ambassador was coming from, since he's coming from Central Region and, Mr. Kofi Annan was also coming there. Of course, many people there would feel ownership of him than other people. But I think that he grew to a stage that one particular group of persons could not claim ownership. And in fact, some would tell you that Ghana cannot even claim ownership of him, because where he reached, he became an icon for the entire continent of Africa, and particularly progressive-minded people across the globe. You remember, as a UN Secretary General, his first term, his second term, the United States of America, they were bent on getting him out because of his position on the senseless invasion of Iraq by the U.S., government. He took strong positions. We are not saying that Mr. Kofi Annan didn't also have frailties. All of us do have frailties, or if you like, limitations. But when you weigh between those limitations and what he did, you can only come to one conclusion, that we have lost a gem. And I'm wondering whether there can be anybody, at least not in our lifetime, who would fit into the shoes, that big hole that he left. Yes, we may never know. That's why I say I'm wondering. Because frankly speaking, if you look at, we have a lot of diplomats, but how long will it take for it to come to Africa again? When are we going to get the UN Secretary General again? And if we are going to get it, will it be Ghana? And that is why I look at it being a possible impossibilities. So our sincere and profound condolences to the family and to ourselves as people that we have lost this man, if it is confirmed that we indeed lost him. Peter, I think that the issues of the banking sector, and I agree absolutely with Ambassador, that the banking sector forms an integral part of every economy, because that is where you have people putting their monies as deposits. That is where loan facilities are extended to people who are interested in investing. That aside the jobs that the banking sector creates, you are looking at the opportunities available for people who want to engage in businesses, investment, in productivity, in trade. I had the privileged opportunity to have served as a Deputy Minister for Trade. And I can tell you, at a time when we had Dumso, which was a huge challenge to our businesses in this country, the banking sector did play a significant role. My worry about this issue has to do with the types of banks that are collapsing. These are all local banks, or largely local banks, and the collapse of these banks to the admiration of those foreign banks. And I can tell you, I've had some interactions with even Ghanaians who work in some of these foreign banks, and I was shocked, the expression of joy about that. And they hide behind the fact that, yes, this government is now implementing and enforcing the regulatory framework that determines how these financial institutions should work. And you could tell that it is not just about the enforcement of those regulations that is making them happy, but the fact that these banks are collapsing. It is the responsibility of every government at any point in time to ensure that the local banks indeed are doing well, and that responsibility hinges on the fact that certain loan facilities that can be extended to local businesses easily may not be extended to them by these foreign banks. So governments over the years have a huge responsibility to ensure that the local banks are supported, and whatever legally it is supposed to be done to support them to survive, governments do so. My understanding and the interactions I've had with people who have worked with some of the Bank of Ghana specifically is that, yes, you're looking at certain assistance and financial assistance that are extended to local businesses are largely done by the local bank. So it is the view of the Bank of Ghana that at any point in time, all necessary steps be taken to assist those local banks. And therefore, Bank of Ghana took a decision at a time when they had information that these banks were struggling to extend such facilities to them. Now, I think that they themselves have admitted that Bank of Ghana failed in its supervisory role, because when you extend monies to people, you're extending the taxpayers' monies to them. It is your responsibility to ensure that the purpose for which those monies, have been given to those banks, they use them for. But if you extend such financial assistance to such banks and they use the monies to do other things, you cannot absolve yourself of the blame. So we can also blame the Bank of Ghana for reneging on their responsibility to ensure that the supervisory role, which is a mandate of the bank, was done to the fullest. We cannot. The other issue that we look at has to do with the rationale behind extending such facilities, particularly to Capital Bank. We are talking about 610 million. And I agree with my brother and friend, Honorable Adongo, when he stated that he thinks that it's a ploy for us to forget of the collapse of the 5 banks. And his view was that if Capital and UT alone, over 2,000 people lost their jobs. Some have actually lost their lives as a result of it. Livelihoods have been indeed truncated. Educations of kids have been truncated. And if you like, average lifestyles of families, of people who were dependent on the employees of these banks, are in a total disarray. We can't imagine the effect psychologically, economically, and socially on those who were working in those financial institutions and those who were dependent on them. These were just 2 banks. Now imagine 5 banks that have also been collapsed. So if 2 banks could give us, a number of over 2,000 who lost their jobs, it means that the 5 banks, all things equal, should give us over 10,000 jobs that are going to be lost. The question then is, those who have lost their jobs, have there been some respite? What has government done? And listening to the interview on my way, it seems to me that nothing has been done to those who have. You see, the other worrying aspects of it is that depending on your age, there are some banks that will not employ people at certain ages, except for executive positions in which they may want to tap into your experience. There are some of them who can never get any job in any bank, and they can't get any job in any financial institution or organization again because of their ages. Now, assuming that those people never had any investment, and taking into consideration how much they were earning, they certainly might not have any investment. Their lives will be entirely doomed. And for me, that is supposed to be of concern to all of us in having this discourse. One thing I've also realized is that some have deliberately attempted to moralize the discourse because it involved a religious leader. And I think for me it's shameful. Let's demoralize this issue. This borders on improprieties. It borders on, if you like, to a very large extent, fraud that is perpetrated on the people of this country. It doesn't matter who was a board chair. It doesn't matter who held an executive position or non-executive position. What matters is that we should insulate the religious position of individuals involved in this matter and look at it as a financial matter. And you see, Peter, if you are a fan of reading books written by Malcolm X, there is a quotation in his autobiography, and he said, if you permit me, that I am for truth no matter who says it. I am for justice no matter who is it for or against. I am a human being first and foremost. As such, I'm for whoever and whatever benefits humanity as a whole. Credit to Malcolm X. Now, if you listen to such quotations, for me, we should take solace inside that, yes, let's look for the truth. It doesn't matter who is involved in it. What is most important is that several lives indeed are in danger. Mm-hmm. What is most important is that at least 2 people have been reported to have lost their lives as a result of the shock they received with regards to these things. What matters is that almost 10,000 people are going to lose their lives. What matters is that businesses are going to be affected. Investments are going to be affected. Productivity is going to be affected. And therefore, the joblessness is going to be indeed expanded. And for me, that should be of concern to all of us. Now, I think that the statement that was issued by Reverend Pastor Mensa Otabil, for me, was insulting I think that it was an attempt to insult the people of this country the more. And frankly, he's one person I respect so much. And I took position, unpopular positions, even in his defense at the time when he made certain pronouncements that affected my political party. And I remember that I had virtually a banter with a comrade of mine on WhatsApp communication, the position I took, and I felt that we were a bit harsh on him. But I am tempted to think that those people who took that position against him have been vindicated. And you remember when people criticized him, he said those who are criticizing him look like insults. Now, I think the reason why I say it's insulting because you were the board chair of a bank. And in fact, you were a shareholder as a person. And the church that you lead was also a shareholder at that same financial institution. Do you remember at the time there was a preaching of him in which he said that if you want to be a billionaire, go bank with Capital Bank. You remember? Mm-hmm. And information available now indicates that at the time when he was making that pronouncement on the pulpit, he knew that the bank was collapsing. He knew the bank was collapsing. Yet he was telling not only his congregation, but all of us, because those of us who listen to him, because his preachings are played on radios every day, globally, that if you want to be a billionaire, go and bank with the company. When he knew that the bank was collapsing.
He said he was not involved in the bank's
daily operations. That's why I say it's even insulting. You were a board chair. Certain decisions that were taken, and for which reason we are where we are, were decisions that were taken by the board. Peter, the board took certain decisions, for which reason we are where we are. Now, if a bank was struggling, an amount of 610 million Ghana cedis was given to the bank to salvage, to save that bank. And the board that you chair, you sat at the board and decided to take over 2 million Ghana cedis out of the money that was given to the bank to save the bank in what you describe as rebranding. The board took the decision. And the decision was taken at a time when the board was chaired by him. That is one. Two, you also had the same board that took a decision that let's improve the conditions of services or members of the organization. Now, if a bank is struggling, and for which reason the Bank of Ghana has come to your aid, giving you money to ensure that you don't say, you know the purpose of the money. Why Bank of Ghana gave the money, Your Excellency, was that they wanted to avoid what they call the clearance difficulties. So that when people come to the bank and there is no money, what happens is that it wins credibility of the bank, it dampens the spirit of those who bank with it, and some may decide to take their money away. Because, Peter, if I bank with your bank, and now I come to the bank to take money, and I'm told that there is no money. Not that I should wait for a number of minutes or hours that they will have, because some of these banks, you go there in the morning, they can tell you that, wait, we don't have enough. You can wait and you can be guaranteed that at least within 30 minutes or 1 hour, you may have money to take. Now, if I bank with a bank and I come to the bank, I want money, and they tell me outright that there is no money. And there is no any hope of getting money anywhere for the bank. You think that I wouldn't want to take my money from that bank if I have the opportunity. So these monies were given, one, to prevent what they call clearing difficulties, such that people come to the bank and they can have their monies, they can withdraw their monies at any point in time without any difficulty. Bank of Ghana did that because they were confident that with such assistance, those banks will be able to regain their strength, because these things do happen. And I agree absolutely with his ambassador when he said that these things happen. But when they do happen and such opportunities are given for you, now you were the board chair, you sat at the board and you took a decision to use that money not to prevent the clearing difficulties. You decided to use that money to rebrand a bank that was indeed suffocating. spend over 2 million Ghana cedis, and you sit and tell us that you are not an executive member of the board, but that decision was taken at the board meeting which you chaired. That's one. Two, you also have the same board that decided to approve improving services, conditions of services to those who are in it. What my understanding is, when you have difficulty, you also need to indeed avoid certain things and reduce the lives, the luxurious lifestyle that you want to live. Your Excellency, if I decide to take maybe a bottle of Coke every day because I earn 500 Ghana cedis every day and buy chinchinga, maybe about 2 sticks of chinchinga every day, that is a luxury. I can get kinky to eat and still survive. Now, if I am going through difficulty, now I no longer earn 500 a day, I now earn, let's say, 100 Ghana cedis a day. Then I come to you, Your Excellency, and tell you, look, I used to earn 500 Ghana cedis every day, and this is the challenge I face now. I don't earn 500, I earn 200 now. The 200 I have to take care of the home, blah, blah, and other things. Could you assist me? Then you decide that, okay, I am going to give you 10,000 Ghana cedis. Use the 10,000 Ghana cedis, help the business such that you can come to the level at which you were. Now, I take the 10,000 Ghana cedis. Then I decide that now, the chinchinga, 2 sticks of chinchinga and a bottle of Coke I was taking. No, I'll not take 4 sticks of chinchinga. I'll take a bottle of Coke and Fanta. And those who take alcohol, they take Shinak, or what do they call it? Cognac. They will take those things. That is what they did. And this decision was taken by the board, chaired by Pastor Mensa Otabil. That is another issue. Now you have the same board that decided that they were going to do what they call, is it investment something? And they gave 27 million. These monies were used to set up other financial institutions. My understanding of boards, and because I served in boards before, at least I served on the Cocoa Board on behalf of the Ministry for Trade and Industry. Now, before a board would approve monies to be used for any purpose, the board would have been very clear that this money we are approving for you, we are approving it for you to use on this ABCD. Now, if you are a board chair, and what responsible board members and board chairs do is that you even submit report to them as to how you use the monies that was approved for you. Now you come around and you tell us that you were not holding an executive position. Wouldn't it be amounting to insulting the intelligence of the people of this country? And I'm wondering who gave him that advice. And by the way, you have the same Reverend Minister who organizes seminars, leadership seminars at a fee. The leadership seminars he organizes, before you participate in it, you pay. It means that you have what it takes to be a good leader. We were told in this country that even the challenge of depreciation of the value of a city was a leadership problem. We were told. We were told in this country that the challenges we are facing, doing so, something that we experience virtually every 10 years. And when we experienced that, and President Mahama and the NDC position was that we should not have a knee-jerk response in solving this problem. Let's have a permanent solution, no matter how long it takes for us to get the solution once and for all. Let's do that. You mounted the pulpit and you shredded the government to pieces and saying that it was a leadership problem. Now, just common managing a board member. Now you are telling us that because you are not holding an executive position. Frankly, it was extremely insulting. And that is why I said the attempt to moralize this discourse is more galling. It's more galling. No one should attempt to moralize it. It has to do with fraud. Deliberate fraud that is perpetrated on the people of this country by the actions of whoever. It doesn't matter who was the board chair. If the board was a chair, or if the board chair at that time was my imam, I would have said same. If the board chair was my relative, I would have said same. We are talking about a rot. We are talking about livelihood. Now, even if you look at the statement, indicated that for the past 1 year ago, his concern has been those employees of the bank. And thank God that Radio Gold interviewed one of them. That as far as they are concerned, nothing has been done. Today, were we being told about all these stories that are now peddling out, all these things that they have put on the statement issued about non-executive position about the fact that my preoccupation was the survival and the safety of those who engage in it. If there wasn't this issue coming up, and for which reason people started blaming the board chair, we wouldn't have had this. So it is also a hypocritical position. We are hearing this because issues have come up. We still do not know what the bank did with the 610 million. In this country, we were told that when we went in for about 50 million, it became a campaign message, and on the basis of which people accused the NDC of being a corrupt government, on the basis of which President Nanado, including Martin Amidu, who doesn't even have any credibility, they accused the NDC of being corrupt, only for Martin Amidu to appear before a committee and admitted he lied when he said that the NDC was corrupt. President Mahama was corrupt in this country. We still eulogize those people and praise them as corruption crusaders. Now, I can just peddle falsehood against anybody on the basis of corruption. So that when I have an opportunity, I say, no, it was just a perception. By which time I would have destroyed the person, by which time I would have indeed ramshackled the integrity of the person. These are some of the issues. And this thing was also championed and given energy by those on the pulpit. That was what happened. Because people consider them with reverence, much reverence. And whatever they say, we take them hook, line, and sinker. Because we tend to think that they speak for God. The pastors and malams speak for God. And whatever they say is what God asks them to say. So we have been very gullible. Honestly, sometimes I begin to wonder whether indeed Karl Marx was not right when he said religion is the opium of the masses. Because that is the issue. And if you observe and monitor the discourse, you are tempted to agree in absolucy that Karl Marx perhaps was right when he said religion was the opium of the masses. Let's look at the issues that are confronting us. Livelihoods have been truncated, lives have been lost, and more lives possibly could be lost as a result of the trauma that people will go through by the actions recklessly taken by those who were leading these institutions and also government. The other issue that we ought to look at has to do with even the other banks. You have a governor of Bank of Ghana who is absolutely political. His actions and inactions are all politically driven. You have a government and a president who in opposition has bragged that he always fights for the rights of people. He is a Democrat, a consummate Democrat, that rule of law. Yet under his watch, the rule of law becomes a rule of interest. And you dare not stand against him or stand on his way, even if you are using the constitution or the same rule of law which he espoused with alacrity. If you use it, then he has a problem. Governor of Bank of Ghana, who has a tenor of security, was hounded out. The other deputy was hounded out. Auditor General mentioned them, a controlling accountant general hounded out. So the only way that you can survive, even if you have such protection, is to begin singing the songs that are pleasing to their ears, like what the Auditor General is doing, singing the songs that are pleasing to the ears of the king. And the king here is King Nana Addo. You dare not raise any issue that he thinks is unpleasant to him and would even survive at where you are, even if there are protection under the law. And I think that these are some of the issues we ought to be looking at. There is the need for some thorough investigation to be done, not only on the collapse of the 2 banks, but the collapse of the recent 7 banks. More so, when the governor had assured us that everything was fine, those 5 banks were not going to have a problem. But let me conclude on this. We are aware that this Minister of Finance and this government are doing some of these things deliberately to bring in an American bank called Morgan P. and Chase. That's what they are doing. And the Minister of Finance and the family of the president are behind it. They are doing that because, look, take Unibank, for example, or Royal Bank. You have banks that are also been affected. And the reasons are that they haven't met the threshold. Do you know the threshold? Even Nigerian banks are not even up to that threshold. They haven't met it. Yet, they have a lot of monies with government. Contractors who have taken loans, executed government projects, those loans haven't been paid because those loans are with government because government hasn't paid. Now, you knew this, and deliberately they refused to pay the contractors. Perhaps Mr. Nyantachi in the Anas tape said that their monies will rot. This money's rotting is not just what he said, but it's a grand scheme. You haven't paid those contractors. How will the contractors pay these financial institutions, and for which reason they can meet that particular level you are? We are also picking information, certain statements that were made by certain people in government about certain banks long before they came to office. You turn the Minister of Finance to be the another extension of Oforiate's empire. You do that. Now you want to bring Morgan P. and Chase and deliberately taking some of these actions. I am not saying that don't enforce the regulatory instrument. That's not what I'm saying. But even under the law, where you think that closing these banks would have dire consequences on people, it would affect the economy, you weigh it. Will there be a way we can, perhaps temper the law with the possibility of trying to see how we can save these banks so that we don't have an effect? Is there a way? And I shudder to think that there was enough, in fact, several ways by which government could have done that. But they decided to charter the path of envy, the path of anger, the path that is emotionally driven because it is a scheme, an agenda to call up certain banks so that foreign banks can be brought in. Do you know over 800 American troops are already in Ghana? And when they said that this ban for fishing, it wasn't any ban for fishing. It was to allow some of them to come in, and they succeeded in doing that.
Thank you very much, Comrade Murtala Mohammed, for that submission. I'll come to you, Mr. Kwesi Prek Jr.
Well, last week, an association to which I belong had a meeting. And the course of the meeting, quite a huge majority brought up an issue and said we should withdraw our accounts from a local bank. And they did indicate that given the developments in the banking sector, our resources will be more secure with what they called an established bank. My understanding of the discussion was that they felt insecure keeping our monies in local banks and so on. Now, this has huge consequences for the national economy. It has huge consequences for government and state policy. It's an indication of where we have gotten to since all of this started. The lack of confidence in local banks will most likely translate into a domination of the financial sector by foreign capital. And if you had a situation where the financial sector was dominated by foreign capital, what would be the consequences of that for the much talked about Ghana without aid, or development without aid? What would that do to the aspiration to pursue a self-reliant national economy? What would be the consequences? And I think it's important that we all think about these consequences. There is something else that I think is important to reflect on. I recall that when the New Patriotic Party was in opposition, their whiskey, Alhaji Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, indicated that as a result of the incompetence of the Mahama administration, about 8 banks would go under. What's happening?
No, your microphone is not there.
I want to someone send it.
I'm saying that I recall that when the New Patriotic Party was in opposition, their rich kid, Alhaji Dr. Excellency Bawumia, warned us that as a result of the incompetence of the Mahama administration, 8 banks were likely to go under. And he promised that if indeed we voted for the New Patriotic Party and they captured power, they would take steps to save those 8 banks from going under. Of course, they won the election, and they've been jubilating ever since that the difference between their votes and that of their largest rivals is about 1 million votes. Have they saved the banks? Has any bank been saved since they assumed office? So far, 7 banks have gone under. And there are very strong indications, very, very strong indications that a few more are likely to go under. What happened? Why have they not been able to keep the promise that they made to the people of Ghana? That's another leg of the discussion. Now, what is happening should not surprise anybody. Just 5 years ago, the indicators were there. It was quite clear that what is happening was going to happen. I recall that the newspaper edit 3 years ago, indeed on January 19th, 2015, carried a front page story which warned that the Capital Bank was going to go under. We published internal documents of the bank which clearly indicated that the bank could not be saved. We wrote an editorial calling on the Bank of Ghana to act then. We're talking about 3 years ago. So the question to ask then is, why? Why did the regulatory bodies go to sleep? Why was nothing done about the situation which was brewing? At least we knew 5 years ago, we knew 3 years ago. So how come that nothing was done? Now, what has happened? If you listen to the Bank of Ghana, officials of the Bank of Ghana, and read their statements and so on, they are simply telling us that, look, they have been deceived into granting licenses to entities which did not qualify to have those licenses. This is the Bank of Ghana. The Bank of Ghana says that they've been deceived because accounts which were submitted to them had also been falsified. And that all along, the Bank of Ghana has been acting on false information. That's another huge statement. Are we saying that the Bank of Ghana does not have the capacity to do due diligence before issuing licenses? Are we saying that the Bank of Ghana is that incompetent? Are we saying that? Now, if that is what we are saying, where is the guarantee that the Bank of Ghana has been able to deal with its defects now? Why is that guarantee? I'm not so sure. So that's another matter that I think is worthy of consideration. What do we do as a people to strengthen institutions, especially regulatory institutions, to enable them to perform their functions? Now, I've been reading all kinds of reports about the financial sector of the national economy. And one of the reports that I've read is the KPMG's report on Unibank. And the report says very clearly that indeed, if the government of Ghana were to pay all of its liabilities, the liquidity problems of Unibank would not pose a threat. In fact, indeed, Unibank would not have liquidity problems. So then it seems to me that part of the problem has to do with the state of the national economy. The fact the government is unable to pay its debt is also part of the problem. Now, why is government unable to pay its debt? And we have been given an insight by the former Minister of Finance, Honorable Seth Tekpe. Indeed, it was Honorable Seth Tekpe who told us that tax revenues were so bad that if you collected even all the tax revenues and so on, you still had a situation where up to about 70% of total tax revenue was going into paying the remuneration of only 600,000 workers. So it's a problem we've known over the years, that government is broke. Government doesn't have the resources to be able to tackle some of the very, very ambitious programs and not so ambitious programs that it has been announcing over the years. So again, the question is, what do we do in order to strengthen the finances of government? All kinds of suggestions have been put forth before. One of them being widening of the tax net. And I heard this when I was a baby. When I was a very, very small boy, our officials used to talk about widening of the tax net, drawing the informal sector into the tax net and so on. I mean, that mantra has been sung for well over 50 years and nothing appears to have been done. That's part of the problem. But for me, the most significant part of the problem is that in this situation, in which tax revenues are so short that we can't do anything, leading to the collapse of banks and so on, we are still granting huge tax concessions to multinational corporations. And we've spoken and spoken and spoken about this situation, and nobody appears to listen. Listen, in the mining sector, for example, all of us have heard reports about companies which were given 5-year tax holidays. They carried on their operations for 4 years and a half and declared bankruptcy or liquidated and formed new companies which were also then given 5-year tax holidays and so on. I mean, this fraud needs to come to an end. You understand? Now, you have all these giant companies in the mining sector whose shareholders abroad, are fattening their bank accounts and so on. And the Ghanaian economy is not benefiting substantially from the operations here in terms of raising government revenue. Some time ago, we actually went to the extent of signing what we called the Foreign Exchange Retention Agreement with some of these companies. And I was absolutely scandalized when I came to realize that some of these companies could retain up to 98% of the total value of exports. 98%. I was so scandalized. It was unbelievable. Then about 6 years ago, one of the giant mining companies went to Parliament for a parliamentary review and so on. And their chief executive actually told our Parliament that in that particular year, the foreign exchange they retained abroad was 100%, which meant that not a peswa of the value of exports was brought back into the Ghanaian economy. Why would local banks not collapse? Why would government not have problems of access to funds and so on? So that's another area that we need to interrogate properly. How to make sure that resources are available to our governments and that our governments are able to meet their obligations to contractors and so on time, so that they do not become a major problem for the financial sector, especially the banking institutions and so on. I think it's an area that we need to look at. Now, government borrowing is also a huge problem. I mean, apart from its inability to pay contractors and so on, government borrowing, direct borrowing from the banks, is also a major problem. And you recall that banks like Ghana Commercial Bank and so on were having extreme difficulties. They were having liquidity problems as a result of the fact that we were taking their resources to import crude oil, to power our thermal generation plants and other things and so on. Indeed, the last time I checked, the Volta River Authority alone was indebted in terms of crude oil purchases to the level of about $600 million. 600, that's one institution in the energy chain, $600 million and so on. Now, fortunately, the previous government decided to do something about this. And they introduced what they called ESLA, ESLA, which was the Energy Sector Levy, as a result of raising some funds in order to deal with the problem. Indeed, if ESLA had not come about, a lot more banks would have collapsed by now. And so on. Of course, we do know that ESLA now is being leveraged in order to float bonds and so on. We can do that discussion at another time. But that is the situation with what is happening. So now, I think that we cannot refuse to discuss some of the statements which have been made in the course of the week. And this morning, I've seen a statement which has been made by the former boss of the UT Bank, Mr. Kofi Amoabeng. It's a very interesting statement. You know, it had been alleged that 5 million Ghana cedis was transferred into his account and that he failed to make full disclosure. And the impression is that he was doing something untoward or something against the regulations of the bank and so on. The explanation I've read today appears satisfactory. What he's saying simply is this, that the bank was in distress. He was selling his personal property at Roman Ridge, and therefore decided that the money which was going to be realized from the sale of his personal property at Roman Ridge should be deposited in his bank account in order to shore up the finances of the bank, and that he needn't disclose that he was putting money in the bank. Sounds reasonable to me.
Was it his personal account?
Yes, his personal account. His personal account. So, sounds very reasonable to me and so on. So, I would leave it at that. Then, there's the statement which was issued by the man of God, who doubles as the chairperson of Capital Bank. And I refer to Pastor Mensah Otabil. The gravamen of his statement is simply that he was not responsible for the collapse of the bank. And that at the time that he went onto the bank was already collapsing. So he went in there to help an ambitious friend or whatever who has set up the bank and to save the bank from distress. And that he was not even an executive chair of the board. He was a non-executive chair of the board. Interesting statements. First of all, if he went onto the board to save the bank from collapse, then what has happened? The bank has collapsed anyway. So, did he achieve the objective of going onto the board? No, obviously no. The bank was failing. He went in there to save the bank from failing, and the bank has failed. So that's so much about competence and so on. But you see, for me, that is not the heart of the matter. The issue really is, what is the function of a non-executive chair of the board of a financial institution? The impression that the non-executive chair does not know what happens in the bank and cannot be held responsible for what happens in the bank and so on, I think is erroneous. Policies which guide lending and so on of the bank are determined by the board, with or without executive chairs and so on. They determine policy. The board also has responsibility, in fact, supervisory responsibility, to ensure that those policies that they formulate guide the performance of the bank and so on. Now, it's strange that this claim has been thrown in because there is evidence, there are records indicating that at least 4 years ago, the board of Capital Bank was informed about everything that was happening. Who was taking money without collateral, who were taking money or was not paying back, and so on. The board was fully informed. Indeed, Dr. John Kofi Mensah, currently the managing director of the Agricultural Development Bank, was the chief executive officer of Capital Bank at the time. Dr. John Kofi Mensah actually wrote a memo detailing everything that was wrong with the bank, addressed to the non-executive chair of the board, And indeed, in that memo, he indicated very clearly that if the board failed to take remedial action, all of them would end up in prison. This is 3 years ago. In fact, written before 3 years ago. I got a copy of that memo 3 years ago. And it will be strange if anybody on the board says that they did not see that document. We must also record the minutes of the board meeting which discussed this matter. You understand? So that claim is a bit problematic. Indeed, it is very problematic. You understand? Then there's also on record that the board itself set up a committee, a subcommittee of the board, to investigate what's happening in the bank. The subcommittee of the board wrote a report indicating that some of the board members were dipping their long hands into the coffers of the bank and they were not paying back what they were taking from the bank and so on. Indeed, in one of the reports, it is alleged that some board members actually took monies in the millions and bought properties beyond East Legon.
Where is East Legon?
Which they did not pay back and so on. All these reports are available. So that claim that board members did not know and so on is false. Indeed, I think that all of us as Ghanaians who are interested in protecting the indigenous sector of our financial architecture and so on should be exceedingly grateful to Dr. John Kofi Mensah. Indeed, he deserves our praises for discovering all of these lapses and bringing these lapses to the attention of the board, and eventually, because of what he did, his diligence and so on, the Ghanaian public got to know about what was happening in the bank. You know, in other situations, the managing director of a bank or the CEO of a bank, if he saw that everybody was taking something out and nothing was happening and so on, he could have joined the fray and also enriched himself and so on. But he didn't. He raised the alarm. And I'm so full of respect for this gentleman who is now in charge of the Agricultural Development Bank. And I do want to hope that the diligence he displayed at Capital Bank would be displayed also in the Agricultural Development Bank, that he will stand up for what is right and so on, and protect that public bank from predators who may want, predators and vampires who may want to suck the blood of that institution. Now, in all of this, another thing that comes up for discussion and mention is simply corporate governance. Corporate governance. You know, banks, by their very nature, cannot be purely private. They serve a public good. You operate in the public domain. It is you and I who put our pesos and cedis into the bank to make them viable and so on. You understand? So we should be asking ourselves whether it is okay for entities and individuals to set up banks and decide to populate the banks with whoever they choose. Because I know of one of the banks, and it's difficult for me to speak about this bank and so on, because I have a relationship with the bank, you understand. But in this discussion, I think it's important that we all speak the truth and so we can get a clear picture of what actually happened. The bank is established. The chair of the board is a friend of the promoter of the bank. The board members are like the children of the promoter of the bank, and so on. I mean, if you do that, why would the bank not collapse? Running a bank is a professional assignment which is described as management of risk and so on. You've got to have certain skills. You've got to have a certain understanding of banking and so on to be able to do that. Now, the Bank of Ghana, the regulatory authority, ought to have ensured that competent and qualified people populated the boards and other structures of the banks. And I believe that if things were done professionally, perhaps we would not be where we are today. So today, given what we know and given what the banks have gone through and so on, I think it's absolutely important to insist on the regulator venturing into governance issues, corporate governance issues. I hope you understand what I'm saying. Because without that, we will be in big, big trouble. Then there is the issue of the indigenization of the Ghanaian economy. And I like to look at a country like Nigeria. Look at the Nigerian, the size of the Nigerian economy. Nigeria produces 2 million barrels of oil a day. That should give you an idea of the size of the Nigerian economy. The population of Nigeria is in excess of 100 million. In fact, getting closer to the 200 million mark and so on. That's the population of Nigeria. That's a huge economy and so on. Nigeria, if you go to Nigeria and you want to count foreign banks in Nigeria, you can actually count them on your fingertips. Why? Because Nigeria has a policy of indigenizing the financial sector of its economy. So in Nigeria, there is positive discrimination in favor of indigenous banks. Indigenous banks and foreign banks don't have the same criteria for their operations. When you come to Ghana, it's the reverse. In Ghana, recently the Bank of Ghana decided to raise the capital adequacy ratio. Yeah. It was the same for indigenous bank and the same for foreign banks. Why? If you have a policy of development without aid and so on, you've got to back that policy up with other policies which ensure that indigenous institutions can survive in order to prop up the economy, in order to hold the economy. If you have a policy of development without aid and your local banks are collapsing, your manufacturing is in trouble because of foreign exchange difficulties and so on, you would never be able to realize that dream. So it is important for national leaders and planners to have a dialectical approach to development. And by having a dialectical approach to development, I'm simply saying that we should avoid one-sidedness and we should see things in their interconnectedness. If you see things in their interconnectedness, then we realize that the policy of development without aid or beyond aid and so on is connected to the development of indigenous banks and is connected to a policy of industrialization and is connected to the stability of the national currency and is connected to the availability of water and is connected to the availability of electricity and so on, then we'll be doing holistic planning. Then we'll be thinking dialectically, you understand, and so on. Right now, there's a disconnect, or there are several disjoints in our thinking and planning, and that creates huge problems. Now, there are so many things to talk about, but I think we don't have enough time, so I'll try and clamp down and limit my presentation. The final thing I want to talk about is this whole idea of the private sector being the engine of development and growth. My brothers, this idea is so nonsensical, I don't know why anybody will push it. It simply doesn't make sense. Our history and our practice by now should be teaching us that that policy is a foolish policy which must be abandoned. Look, until recently, Ghana was producing vehicles, cars, vehicles, you understand? Until recently, we were producing our own matches. Until recently, we were producing shoes, television sets, refrigerators, and co-minini, matches, kede match, machetes and machetes and so on. We're producing all of these things in our country. Then, after the 1966 coup, we decided to embark on unbridled privatization. So far, we've sold about 400 of these entities to private capital. Tell me how many of them have survived in private under private capital. Master, tell me how many of them survived. We handed them over to private capital and they died. And we are still shouting about private capital being the engine of growth and development. What is wrong with us? Are we crazy? It hasn't worked. We've tried this since 1966. We have collapsed 400 industries. They don't exist anymore. And we are still foolishly pursuing the same objective. It's unbelievable. Now, if you come to look at this banking sector collapse, it amplifies the point I'm making. Private sector in banking, what happened? At least within the last 18 months, 7 of them have collapsed. Who goes to their rescue? The State Bank. Who who goes to their rescue? It is not the private capital which is rescuing the state institutions, it's the state institutions rescuing private capital. Now, if you don't want to learn from our own example, learn from the example of the United States of America, the citadel of capitalism. Why? When the private banks went under, how were they saved? State funds. State funds was injected into them in order to save them and so on. So this whole business of the private sector being the engine of growth and development is crumbling before our eyes. And the earlier we realize that, the better it will be for us. As we speak, the Ghana Commercial Bank remains the largest bank in Ghana. It remains the most stable bank in Ghana, and so on.
Because it has been operating since 1953.
Well, we are saying the same thing I'm saying. Yeah, you understand? So, we need to wake up and realize that some of these things really mean absolutely nothing. In fact, if we follow these policies, it will be to our own detriment. Now, I've heard a lot of people, I mean, if you tune into radio, and in fact, I listen to Radio Gold a lot, especially in the mornings, you know, when I'm driving to work, my dial is on Radio Gold. And I listen to callers and all kinds, even some professionals and so on. And everybody, same mantra, catch them, lock them up, prosecute them. Yes, the law prescribes penalties for those who infringe it. And we cannot alter that. So if people fall foul of the law, they are expected to be dealt with by the law itself. I have no difficulty with that. However, where should our emphasis be? Where should our emphasis be? Indeed, we are told that billions of dollars or cedis, billions of cedis, have gone into the effort to salvage these banks. All this money has gone down the drain. Now, we are struggling to find resources to finance free SHS, to the extent that we are reintroducing the shift system with all its problems and so on. The one district, one factory thing, in tree, what can then, what's the fear missing? Maybe so. You know, what's the fear missing and so on. You understand? And all of this money is available. It can be recovered. It can be, we can find it and so on. So why is the emphasis not on recovering the funds that have been lost or the funds that have gone into wrong hands? Why is that not the emphasis? Why is our emphasis on jailing people? Okay, you catch the man, you jail him 10 years. Do you know what that would mean? For 10 years, you're going to clothe him, feed him, be responsible for his health and so on. In addition, Peter, we're going to incur more debt and so on. So I think that the emphasis ought to be on recovering the monies which are lost. That is where the emphasis are. If you want to jail people and so on, fine, jail them. But for me, jailing people does not solve the real problem that we have, which is that taxpayers' money has gone where it ought not to go. And as a result, it's impeding our development efforts and so on. For me, that is far more critical than all, the other considerations and so on. Now, in the course of the week, there was also very interesting propaganda, whichever. I mean, now, this whole matter, some people think that the best way of dealing with it is to turn it into a battleground between the National Democratic Congress and the NPP. And in the process, so many things that don't make sense. I was going to use stronger words, but I'm advised that this is radio. So many things that don't make sense. are being said. We are being forced to consume them and so on. This week, if you recall, there was a massive propaganda attack on Ibrahim Mahama.
Yes, sure.
I mean, there was the effort to create the impression that all these banks should have survived if Ibrahim Mahama had not borrowed 302 million cedis from UT Bank. Master, the amount of money that went under, not in UT Bank, in Capital Bank alone, was in excess of 600 million. 600 million. We are talking about a total quantum of money which is in the billions of cedis and so on. You understand? Now, I've had a chance also to find out what exactly happened between UT Bank and Ibrahim Mahama. It's not even personal, it's his companies.
Yeah.
And what happens simply is that they are building a cement factory. They go into an agreement with the company to finance the building of the cement factory. The agreement says that when the cement factory starts production, it will begin to pay the loan. And to facilitate that, it's agreed that the bank should open a branch in the cement factory and collect the sales. So the sales will go directly to the bank and so on. The cement factory is about 90% complete. How can you be talking about default? Where is the default? When the agreement says that when the company starts operations, it will pay. The company has not started operation. There is no evidence of diversion of funds from the cement factory to other enterprises and so on. How is this a problem? Somebody must be explaining to me. You understand? And you know why the attempt to use this for political propaganda is problematic? Because look, this started under the previous administration, no doubt. I mean, the documents we published about Capital Bank and so on was in 2015, on January 19, 2015. So it happened from the previous administration. What about Construction Bank? It is the current governor of the Bank of Ghana who inaugurated the Construction Bank.
But they said the process started in 2016.
So
Peter, so what?
You understand? So why? If you look at the dates and so on, everybody will get some share of the blame. Perhaps some people will get more, some people will get less. But it all sums up, as failure of regulation. Failure of regulation under both NDC and NPP. If I lie, tell me. You understand? So this is not a matter for cheap propaganda. This is a matter for sober reflection. This is a matter which can collapse our financial sector. This is a matter which can lead to the complete foreignization of the financial sector. These are the key things that we need to be looking at. This is a matter of government not making enough revenues to be able to pursue its ambition and so on. The sideline cheap propaganda must take a rest. You understand? So that we can focus on the major and essential issues which would help us to build a vibrant economy, which can also help us to build a prosperous society in which no child will go to bed on an empty stomach. This is the task before us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kwesi Pratt Jr., for that submission. Let me pick a few of the messages that I have here. This one here says, if men of God are now fraudsters, what will happen? What will the common floor members do? Only God can save us from this affliction. By Akufo-Addo and his government. From Carl Inkpando sent that message through. Peter, the money was given to the banks because they want to revive the data bank of Ken Oforiatta instead of paying the contractors to pay the banks. Odro in Abekalapa sent that message through. From Albert Clotty, Says, good morning, Peter, and congratulations for accepting to be in the big chair this morning. Peter, I always say we don't have prophets for this nation. All the people who say they are prophets of the nation all end up speaking for the MPP. Why? Please let Pastor Otabil know that God is not asleep or dead, so he sees all that we do. And sees us all. Thank you, Albert, for that one. What has happened to Prudential Bank returns that financial institutions are expected to submit to the BOG every month? The Prudential returns are one of the off-site monitoring strategies at Bank of Ghana's disposal. Good morning, Alhaji and Alhaji. Kofi in Accra sent that message through. If man of God, okay, I think I've taken that one. Pastor Otabil is a selfish person. He worked with the team, and now that something went wrong, he betrayed the team. How different is he from Judas? Thanks, Patrick from Accra sent that one in. Mr. Pratt, the government does not have money because we have 111 ministers and almost 1,000 workers at the Flagstaff House. Do you know how much salaries these people collect each month? Some of them live in Achim but are paid. Let me go on to Pub MCGH. Those of us watching us live from Pub MCGH and read a few of the messages you have also sent. Red Robbins says, this man, okay, he's referring to Uncle Kwesi. I would want to serve him one day. I would like to hear him speak every day. Uncle Kwesi, someone wants to serve you one day, so I don't know. Sylvester Mauli Soglo says he's watching us from Race Course in Sotium. Okay, thank you. Kwashi Agbeshi says, I like the way Mr. Pratt is doing his presentation. If he did this when NDC was in power, they wouldn't have been in opposition today. NDC in opposition itself, I inflicted, I don't know. Okay, thank you for that message. Bernard Agbo says he's watching from Pokwase, and it says, Uncle Kwesi, I like your submission. More fire. Still, Mahama Beba. Let me pick the last one. Duke Maxwell says, okay. Thank you, Maxwell, for that message. The collapse of our local banks is due to negligence and incompetence of the government of the day, and I'm appealing to all delegates in the northern region to vote for Yellow Man as our regional chairman. Okay, Prosper Do Kabute, thank you, and thank you, A.U. Farouk in Tamale, for that message that you sent. I would move on to you, Prof. But you would have to do the two topics for me, since I thought you weren't coming, so I gave your time to Uncle Kwesi. So he has exhausted your
Well, no, you mean okay? Then let's go on to the second one.
No. I just want you to combine it. When you finish with the first one, you can move on to the second one before I come to any other.
I need a respite.
Yeah. I've seen that one.
Well, thank you very much. I think so much had been said on this topic by my other panel members, who have done an excellent job. This is a matter that we know is before a statutory body in terms of investigations and subsequent action that must be taken or could be taken. That's the Economic and Organized, is it a crime unit? Okay, YOCO they call it. And so we will respect that, hoping that when we get there, we'll also have other matters for commentary. I think lawyers always say there is, you can also have a matter before the general public, and they say, well, going to the court of public opinion. Okay. Pastor Mensah Otabil's statements and his role.
Hold on for me for a second. Someone says, please tell Radio Gold that former MD of Capital Bank was sacked from ADB last year. It's urgent. Uncle Kwesi Pratt has been praising him since last week under the impression that he did a good job. They bought him out of his 3-year contract, which had barely run 1 year. So that's the information that...
Okay. It's wrong information. John Kofi Mensah is
I
still
would-
the,
I would have my
the
producers
managing
check
director.
that.
Yeah, he's still the managing director of the BP.
Okay. So, as I indicated, the Capital Bank and UT Bank saga had resurfaced, quite apart from the undertones with respect to the current issue of Consolidated Bank taking over 5 banks that had also collapsed. There are critical issues that we need to bring out, and the members of the Court of Public Opinion will be well informed. They are well informed. And as I indicated, Pastor Mensah Otabill's statement and his rule of acts of omission or commission, he says he submitted himself to IOCO and he's cooperating with them. So how far that can go, we leave that for a while. You know, in the U.S., a couple of years ago, the economic crisis that hit the world, and in particular also the U.S., Congress passed an act that they call the SOX, that is the Sarbanes and Oxley Act of 2002. And it was to really streamline and make sure that the processes of auditing, reporting, corporate governance of U.S. public institutions were put into proper perspective. And many people hail that as a dramatic change to federal securities. And today, I think they've come off from this meltdown, and the securities environment is well sanitized. When we talk of governance, I think we all know governance has been with us from time immemorial. Even as far as civilization, we've been governing ourselves. So governance is nothing other than the act or process of governing. And corporate governance or public corporate institutions are supposed to operate in a form of representative government, just like how we elect our governments. And if you talk of public entities, and in this particular case, our financial institutions or any limited liability, any company, and when you read the company's code, all these things are well spelled out. And anybody who registers a business will tell you all the rigorous conditions that you have to meet. So owners of any establishment, and for this case matter, the banking institutions that we've been dealing with, or all who are still operating, that shareholders who are the owners of the institution will elect representatives as directors to constitute a board. And that board then takes over the oversight responsibility or the oversight role of the institution. They appoint a CEO, and then that CEO belongs to the board, but then they supervise the CEO, then he will be in charge of the day-to-day operations. But the board reserves the right to give direction, even advising on strategies. These innate responsibilities of the board cannot be compromised. And so at this moment, we can see how Pastor Otabill's statement that he was a lay fellow, or executive or not executive, we will challenge that, or we'll discuss that later. So we must be clear in that regard. And in all these, we have what we call corporate governance. And so governance is a very, very important issue. Even governments that we elect, all these checks and balances, you have SHRAD, you have IOCO, Parliament itself, the judiciary, etc. You don't have absolute power, even if your powers are defined in the Constitution. Now, because we are running a constitutional governance system or constitutional government, we are governed by rules and regulations, and the rules are through enactments of Parliament and other legislative enactments. There is the Bank of Ghana Act of 2002, and I would like to read some portions if my time will just be spent on that. Section 4 of Act 612 of that's the Bank of Ghana Act of 2002 has the functions of the bank, central bank. And 4.1d says that to regulate, supervise, and direct the banking and credit system and ensure smooth operation of the financial sector. Then 4.1h says that license, regulate, promote, and supervise non-banking financial institutions. Then you jump to Section 54, that is Part 4, Banking and Supervision and Research, and the head of Banking Supervision and of Financial Institutions. 54.1 say of Act 612, the bank shall have an officer designated as the head of the Banking Supervision Department of the bank, who shall be appointed by the board. The head of the Banking Supervision Department shall be responsible for the supervision and examination of all banking institutions in the country and perform functions specified under the enactment to be performed by the head and the Banking Supervision Department. And goes on with statistical and publication of bulletin and reports, requests for research information, and so many others. Then in 2016, the 612 was amended. And it will be of interest to bring out some key. Section 22 of the Act 918 of 2016 inserted and expanded the role of the chief internal auditor. They said there shall be a chief internal auditor of the bank, and specify the high caliber in terms of his position, and the chief internal auditor shall perform the functions of office of the high degree of independence and without interference, and states the functions of the chief internal auditor. Then last but not the least is in section 46. Section 46 was inserted into the Act. And listen, it said emergency liquidity assistance. And that reads, the bank, that is 46.1, says that the bank may, for the purpose of Section 312, provide liquidity assistance to a bank or savings and loans company or financial house which the bank has determined to be illiquid but solvent. The bank shall, for the purpose of providing emergency liquidity assistance under this section, prescribe the terms and conditions for the grant of emergency liquidity assistance. The terms and conditions include: 1, the requirement for the bank or savings and loans company or financial house receiving the emergency liquidity assistance to provide the bank with adequate collateral for the assistance granted. B, the tenure of the emergency liquidity assistance. C, the interest rate chargeable. And for the purposes of this section, emergency liquidity assistance means the provision by the bank of money as a loan or solvent to a solvent bank or savings and loans company, etc. Now, Peter, I've read all these things to tell you that insofar as this matter of Capital Bank and the other banks that have collapsed is concerned, we cannot just leave the matter as it is. And like I said, perhaps the persecution aspect will come after the investigative work by the IOCO, and then government will decide what to do. But the Bank of Ghana cannot absolve itself. The Bank of Ghana. And so far, we don't know whether the Bank of Ghana itself has been invited by IOCO, but perhaps it's a process. So the process then is looking at the institutions concerned, and later on, Bank of Ghana may come in. But with our company's code, the board and management and auditors cannot be absolved from this matter. Not at all. Register even a one-man company and you will see the requirements. Your team, you have to have bank operations, GRA is always on you, you have staff, SNIT. The framework itself for individuals who are running companies, they will tell you. More so with a huge establishment like this, it's not possible. And like I said, the persecution aspect has been initiated, and let's leave that. Now, there are experts who have spoken on this matter, and on Thursday or Wednesday, I bought the Daily Graphic, and on the front page, 3 financial experts, including one Mr. Siedu Mante, who was one time a deputy governor, said Pastor Otabil, Mr. Otabil cannot absolve himself from what has happened. And people have indicated on this program before I walk in that for goodness sake, who issued this statement? But it is a statement issued by him, And given his level of enlightenment and intelligence, we cannot blame anybody who issued a statement on his behalf. So he owns the statement. You understand? If you have attended or you know the establishment of the ICGC, you will know that it's a well-structured institution. And though we go there to worship God, you realize that visit any of their parishes or any branches, well-structured. The head pastor is like a CEO. There are committees on security, etc. If you don't have to be employed with papers, but if you have a security background, and you know already, maybe the apostle or whoever wants on the Sunday, he's charged with the Spirit and he wants to deliver people and say, Peter or Nino will be winning, his 3 numbers will drop today. When he's coming to lay hands, even security is around him. You understand? I mean, the church is structured. And I recall in the last quarter of 2016, when Central University College then received their charter granted by President Mahama, there was a church service to thank the Almighty for the ICGC, for Central University College becoming a full-fledged university. And it's kudos to them. He said that God has blessed him, and at least at this moment in his life, he has achieved 3 great things: owning a church, or founding and owning a church, owning a bank, and then now a university.
That's what he said.
Yes. I may not quote him exactly, but go and look for the speech. You understand? So and as I say, if you take ICGC, I've attended some of their church services. It's a well-structured institution. Like any other established religious body or any institution, they have their presbytery, the structure. Even to become a member, you go through ABC classes, etc. It's a structured institution with a large following. Is that the way we preside over the church? No. And then come to think of it, the matter that we are talking about is taking his personality out. We are in the arena of moral credibility. And then you combine it with his stature. It is because he's a man of God. And people have come to respect him for what he espouses. So it's not a matter of listening to the message and excluding the messenger. In this particular issue, when you are a man of God or Allah, the message and the messenger are intertwined. You understand? And to preside over any board, apart from not having the requisite background, that we may understand and maybe blame Bank of Ghana. And indeed, I spoke to a colleague who has been in the banking sector for a long time and is now retired. He said, look at the profile of the board of directors. And the Bank of Ghana should find out how some of them had worked in other banks and they left the banks for what reason? And they find themselves as members of the board of directors. And now you see the sentiments, despite maybe the issue about politics and trying to douse the impact of the 5 banks that have just been liquidated. I was out of town. I was in the Brong-Ahafo region during the past 1 week or so. And people are saying, look, how much is one ambulance? And then people started dividing the 610 million by the cost of one ambulance. Then, Comrade Mutala, the President Mahama's school block, how much did one cost?
4 million.
From 4 million. Then they started dividing the 610 by 4. How many schools will we have? Then people started going down, looking at this brigade that had been set up. How much are they going to be paid? And so many things. So now, ordinary people, and our sister radio station said, look, now you live in some places, even in Accra. Those of us who drive small cars, we know how much we spend. Today is ball joint, the next time is shock absorber, the next time is tie rod, the next time is spring. So if you own a 4-wheel drive, it's not for luxury. Because when you live, fetching water which doesn't flow, going over rugged terrain, safari even terrains are better. So you own such a vehicle is the most economic and rational thing to have. Now they say it's a luxury. So you go to register your vehicle, then you have to pay 1,000 cedis. And by government estimation, by the end of this year, government will rake in 300 million. And 300 million, all these tight measures. And somebody even said that now, I have a nephew who told me that, uncle, now even the economy is sad that if you go and buy kulikuli, there's a tax component. You know kulikuli? He said there's a tax component. You see, you go buy it, there's a tax component. But albeit, that is how tight the situations are. And you think that you bail a bank. And so with all this regulatory framework, 27 million into business promotion, where did the money go? And so, well, much has been said, and as I said, there will be opportunity for commentary.
There are two more issues now. You might want to pick any of them. I mean, if you want to box all of them together too, that's fine.
No, our time is sad that.
Yeah, you do that in the next 15 minutes.
Okay, so well, you don't want to go around and we turn up with that. We don't want to perhaps say the second one.
Yeah,
let me make a few. You know, these vigilantes and we heard of vigilantes in the Third Republic when we were in the era of Kalabule, and the PNP administration set up a vigilante to make sure people who bought essential commodities as storekeepers did not hoard them. You hoard them because you would like to inflate the price. But in the Fourth Republic, vigilantism has assumed a different dimension. And we've discussed this early last year when the new administration took office with the wave of takeovers and anarchy, that the pathetic situation was with the Ghana Police Service because they were supposed to maintain law and order. We lamented about Nanka Bruce. We had lamented over other acts of atrocities. The Yoko boss in Kumasi, who we saw on telly, Philly, being chased out like a dead goat with due respect to his sensitivities. Then we saw the break-in into the Kumasi High Court and the opportunity afforded them to pay 2,000 cedis each. And we related that to statements that were made around this table, Muntie, and how they received a huge sanction. And we said, look, if you tread on the path of injustice, then you risk creating more. Because when morality fails, society crumbles. You may have the authority, but the will to act will not be there. And your authority is exhibited when people respect you. But when people say that, oh, we're penny bunny, and you don't have any credibility, you realize that you wield authority and nothing will come out of it. That is the crux of the matter. And how many times have we not heard the police boss, we are going to do this, clamping down? The other day I saw in the papers he was meeting the top hierarchy to make sure that use of sirens are not being abused. And I have said in this studio that the police service itself, the men and women, are part of the problem. And today, this morning when I was coming, people with flashlights in front of their four-wheelers were breaking traffic rules with impunity. And how many times would you not see the police itself when there is traffic? They are the first vehicle to jump out of traffic and leave the scene. It's as if the police is always on operations. So stay in traffic will perhaps allow a criminal elsewhere to, but most of the time you see people are in there carrying children, some carrying animal feed, and you know that this is just a normal run, but they cannot stay in traffic. So we are living in a state of anarchy in terms of enforcement of rule of law or enforcing law and order. And so this issue shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. How have we effectively dealt with these excesses? And we even had the head of how the members of the Kandahar group had the temerity and impunity to call a press conference demanding the release. And this was even covered. This subject matter is a simple subject matter. And I don't know how we found space here, because it is important, because we are talking about peace. And without peace, there is cost. And that's the reason why perhaps I give credit for including this matter in our discussion topics. Other than that, the buck stops with the president. You see, It's a matter that if we will have a situation where we say we are banning all vigilante groups, no matter the political party, and the one who is the commander-in-chief and the one that we look up to, and we have all ceded our authority to him, is a president. And the president can deal with this matter. If indeed he has directed the police, then he must demand from the IGP the conclusive resolution of this matter. But too many things have happened. Like we said, Nanka Bruce on tape, what has happened? The Yoku boss in Kumasi, what has happened? Those who broke out for the court, they will say the matter was really subsequently dealt with according to the rules or regulations, and they were granted, they were pardoned or cautioned, and they were made to pay fines. So we can say legally the matter had been addressed. So let's leave that to history. Perhaps ambassador will quote it when he is representing his client as a test case, like you always do when you go to defend the clients in court. But this is going to happen, and we are just some few months into 2019, the penultimate year for elections. And this is going to Congress. Others will go to Congress. Maybe Representative Crowd will get a flag bearer for CPP. You understand? And we are going into the election period. Is he not capable? Anyway, so it is a serious matter. And I will recall what Brigadier Anido once said. He was a commander of our peace mission to Rwanda, and he said, if you have not seen war and its devastation, you will not appreciate the value of peace. And we cannot continue with this. And it must be nipped in the bud. And now I'm saying that the appeal goes to the president, and he's the one we are looking up to. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Nino.
You will let me take a break before we go to sports, if there's time.
Sure. Apollonia City is giving big, and it's almost too good to be true. Get rewarded with cars or lots of amazing home appliances when you buy a home or a plot of land in the Apollonia Mega Dash promo. A 3-bedroom story at the Oxford gets you a brand new Suzuki Balemo from Silver Star Auto Limited, Tear Rubber they call it, and any other home also gets you a top-notch home appliance, but that's not all. You also get quality home appliances for simply buying a service plot of land in Apollonia City. There are no draws and no raffles. Exciting, isn't it? This promo is running from now to the end of September. Everyone in Apollonia wins in the Mega City Promo Dash. Visit www.apollonia.com.gh/Mega Dash or call them on 0275 577-577 for more details. You can also send an email to sales@apollonia.com.gh. Terms and conditions apply. I'll come to you, Ambassador Sampia.
Well, I would want to take on the issue of the attack of the Kandahar or whatever boys. And plead with His Excellency the President, who is the Commander-in-Chief, who has sworn an oath to defend and protect this country and its citizens, and to remind him that we have been having too many attacks from persons who may be linked to his political party. Peter, you will recall that before the 2016 elections, some newspapers reported that there had been some importation of ammunition and they had gotten missing from the airport. You would also recall that some articulated vehicles, when the body was stripped off, was loaded with a lot of cartridges. I mean, that one they used to fire, a lot of them. To date, we do not know who the owners are. to date, we do not know where those ammunitions are. And I would want to advise my sister, the CID commander, director, that the police should be picking some of the ammunitions that are being used in this armed robbery and these attacks on the police and others to compare, with the samples they took of the ammunitions that were seized, so that we can establish some relationship or not, whether we can establish some relationship or not. Because the potential of that enterprise is yet to be unleashed on the people of Ghana, where people have ammunitions in their house, and one of they use it for armed robbery, they use it to attack people. The issue, Professor Donna, we are dealing with is not about any individuals who are unknown to the system. These are people who are aligned to the New Patriotic Party, because at least in the northern region, all the incidents that have happened going to attack the police, the unfortunate thing is that they are attacking state institutions of security. That's the dangerous aspect of that. And once the police is so attacked and so they feel so insecure, they will be protecting themselves instead of protecting the citizenry. That's the danger I foresee. I showed you some time ago, I spoke about an attack in Hafasne. Sir, it was dreadful. The whole community charging on the police. The police had to run away. And when they ran away, what would happen? The people who have access to the armory. When they take the armory, what happens? I was thinking that government would have taken note at the increasing number of such attacks, especially on the security. Peter, you also remember that we were in this country when some Serbians and South Africans were brought into this country. And that I blame President Mahama. Seriously blame President Mahama. That he did not cause the arrest because the people had violated international regulations. You can't go to any country and train people in security. You can't do it.
So we shouldn't have
even our constitution talks about the armed forces. There should be only one armed forces in this country. But we allowed the South Africans to come to and the Serbians to come to Ghana. And all we did was just to deport them. What about the people they were training? This one, I blame my own government at that time for not taking the step that it should be taken. At the time that they were training, these Serbians were training the youth boys. The Getmo 2 were being branded as what? Terrorists. What an inconsistency. This Getmo 2 who have done no wrong, but because of the persecution of Americans, have been branded as criminals, were brought into this country harmlessly. The MPP was talking against it. But in the same period, they were training these boys that have become a terrorist organization on us. Unfortunately, when the issue of the courts came, as a lawyer, the only place of sanctity that I'm afraid of is the court. Apart from the church. After the church is reverence. But in the court, even as a lawyer, I'm afraid. Because when you are cited for even contempt, the possibility is that you are going inside. What is more contemptuous than attacking a judge, sitting judge, trying a case? And the judiciary did not find anything wrong. Dangerous with this. What a dangerous precedent. All they did was to find the people. Prof, people have attacked a judge, chased her out of courtroom. All they did was to find him. Now somebody says something, and let me compare the Munchetre and then this man, whatever, Sir John and the rest, that at Tuguba Chief Justice, his family members, should prepare his funeral. You understand? And compare that which was said about the Chief Justice. Somebody say, excuse my language, they raped the Chief Justice or whatever. Upset, stupidity. You jailed those who were talking about moral and sexual issues, and just find the people who were threatening the life of a Supreme Court judge and his family. That is the issue we are dealing with here. And today, even today, people are still pursuing the Munche 3 case in court for abusing the sexuality of the Chief Justice. What about when Atuguba was threatened? Justice Atuguba was threatened.
Righteousness fails.
You see,
You're in trouble.
today, what we are seeing is that this small group of insurgents, which started in Nigeria, has become Boko Haram, and nobody can control them. Properly following, as if Ghanaians, we don't have instincts that something dangerous can happen. To the extent that when somebody has committed a crime and is put in the police cells, the people go and attack, remove him. And then we have the general secretary of his party saying that, oh, therefore these people, we cannot do away with them, they are our own people. And then we have a member of parliament going to sit in parliament and say, touch those people, I'll bring them people down. You see, where is our morality and ethicality? And in all this, I had expected that Nana Akufo-Addo, who then was a presidential candidate, will now realize that he's been sworn in as the commander-in-chief of this country. And therefore, when a soldier is attacked and killed, you know, one of his men, it was Brigadier Nokun, who said that I will take my men wholly and come back with them wholly, isn't it? Now, so if a major of your army, captain of your army, soldiers is killed, it must be made a matter of concern to you to stem out vigilantism in this country. What are we seeing? What are we seeing? The court is attacked, nothing happens. Now they attack the police people, nothing happens. People in a half a snin attack the police people, nothing happens. One day, who will be attacked? Who will be attacked one day? We have a president who has sworn an oath to defend this country as a commander-in-chief. So, Prof, like you said, I agree with you. It is the president who has to take responsibility that he has a country to govern. He has a country to protect. He has the people and the citizens of this country to protect than his own political party. And then when his political party members infringing the law, he should be the first person, you know, to cause them to be dealt with, not to protect them. You remember also, these people, when somebody was insulting President Rawlings, and then they took him to the police cells in head office, the whole police headquarters, what happened? Forget about the attack on the Electoral Commission. So gradually, it's becoming a norm that when you are in the NPP and you are a member of a certain vigilante group, nobody can touch you. To the extent that even when the president has appointed a regional commander for national security, they say we don't like him because he didn't join us in campaign. Who said a member of the national security should be a member of the NPP or a member of the NDC? This is a problem we are facing. So I think that the president should not renege on his oath to defend the people of this country, whoever the person is, whether it's an MPP or NDC, whether it's a policeman. You know, that is why the police is becoming so frustrated that now they are defending themselves. Have you counted the number of police as deaths these days? Last time at Sukura here, when they go with ammunition, we are insulting them. When they don't go with ammunition, we are insulting them. And so individuals shoots police people. The policeman is also a Ghanaian. And so he's a human being. When I'm going to arrest Kandahar boys and they will shoot me, what would I do? See, Peter, we have a situation that will gradually one day, so that if the NDC now, Prof, if the NDC also decide that we are going to arm our youth, we are also going to arm our youth, what will happen in 2020? But let me caution and warn, if the Kandahar boys have been elected, put together, to do any hanky-panky business 2020 election, they will laugh at the wrong side of their teeth. Ghana, we have men. So if they think that, you know, that is this, I'm the IGP. there are some people who you send to operations and you know that they are not members of the police. The last time at the police headquarters, when there was this demonstration, we saw some bearded boys with guns that were different from that of the police. IGP, if we need more police people professionally, get us to approve for you to use professional policemen. Don't use those people because you are legitimizing your illegitimacy. See, Daniel, the IGP is a very fine police person, and if given the free hand, he can work. So let us all support him so that they can weed out these vigilantes that are being gradually infiltrated into the system. But let me warn again. Anybody who thinks he has been trained as a macho man or vigilante who will mess up with our elections, he will laugh at the wrong side of his teeth. Because we're also getting men who would be capable of facing them. As to the Kosi Yantechi thing, I want a day when any court will start prosecuting Kosi Yantechi, because the complainant in this matter is the President of the Republic of Ghana. You understand? Who, after watching a video, reported the conduct of Kosi Yantechi for investigation by the CID. 4 months, 5 months down the line, nothing has been held.
It's possible he can decide to discontinue.
Well, if he decides to discontinue, let us know. You understand? But Peter, it is having implications on our football in this country. Now FIFA has gone on with its normal bluff. I call it bluff. It is the country, see, when we are talking about sports, and you are a seasoned sports administrator, the Black Stars, the national teams, does not belong to the GFA. The national teams, by law, belong to the countries. They fly our flags. In Russia recently, you saw the president of various countries going there. They fly, and there's the government that pays every cent. I will want Ghana Black GFA to be banned for 4 years so that we can reorganize our sports. Because now, even now, when you say Black Stars, who are going to break? Okay. These old people, I'm watching the old men. So that we can take the 4 years. Yes. So but these are going to the prime, getting to the prime of their game. So that, Prof, when you people were doing cold sports, you were doing national academicals and the rest. Our sports was up there during a champion time, and you know this.
Okay, thank you, Ambassador Sampi Ali. Let me come to you, comrade. You do that quickly for me, and then we can come to this.
I can understand the frustrations of my uncle, and
I need him to cool down for a while.
I thought what sometimes when I get frustrated, then he would tell me Mutala cool down. I can understand. Yes, he always advise Mutala. Yeah, it's true. Well, Peter, I think that we cannot have this discussion in isolation of the persona of our current president. We cannot. And when some of us began talking about his position and the kind of pronouncements he made prior to the 2008 elections, 2012 elections, and 2016, people said we were insulting him. As a matter of fact, we were warned about his presidency. We were warned by people who knew him, I think that better than most of us. People who had lived their lives with him, people who were founding fathers or founders of the NPP, and people who were very close to him. One of such persons was Mr. Kofi Kumsen, and he said that he could not sleep with the presidency of Mr. Nana Addo at that time. Now he's the president, and he also said that under the likely or possible presidency of Nana Addo, that he always sleep with one eye open. This was Kofi Kumsen. By the way, Kofi Kumsen, who is the owner, if you like, of Chronicle, who has been an MPP person who ever contested MPP parliamentary, primary. So we are not talking about an NDC fellow or someone from a different political party. He warned us about Miss President Nana Addo's presidency. He warned us. 2, you have the former President Kufuor in the contest between President Nana Addo, then candidate Nana Addo, and Mr. Lanchirmantin. It was obvious to everybody who, President Kufuor's candidate was. His candidate was Alan Chirmantin. It was obvious. And you remember the leaked video or audio when he met the NPP executive in Ashanti region and said that if you are voting, vote for someone. When you come into he's in public, you don't need to mount a tree or climb a tree to see him. Invariably, everybody knew that you didn't need to climb a tree to see Mr. Alan Chirmantin. Of course, by the physical makeup of President Nanado, then candidate Nanado, he was referring to him. But he didn't stop there. He also said that you should vote someone who would maintain the stability, the peace, and the unity of this country.
Absolutely.
And that there was a particular candidate, if you voted for him, you are going to vote for chaos and anarchy. And I'm saying that was what it was suggestive. But if I am supporting one candidate and I say that vote for my candidate, but who would maintain the peace and stability and unity of this country, what does it mean? It means that the other candidate wouldn't ensure the stability and the peace and the unity of this country. You have Mr. Nyaho Tamokolo, who is one of the founding members of the NPP, who said that he wouldn't vote for Nanado. He said it. And that he would vote for President Mahama because President Mahama would show the peace and unity and stability of this country. So we can't gloss over some of these things. Again, there you have an international organization which was focused on security, and that described then candidate Nanado as a security threat, not only to Ghana, but to the continent of Africa. I mean, these are facts that can be verified. They describe him. You remember his own statement, Etiokura Yechromu Bibi Kakra Etiwa, NDC activists were virtually maimed, beaten to pulp. Some were hurt. Some have been struggling as a result of what happened in Etiwa. And he boasted about it and said that Etiokura Yechromu Bibi Kakra. You remember the statement Cabo made and said that Ghana would turn to Afghanistan. In fact, Prof, I remember as a level 100 student on the campuses of University of Ghana, I remember in the 2000 elections, he said that if the MPP did not win the elections, there would be blood in Ghana. This statement was made by then candidate Nana Addo. So, such statement, remember their current national organizer statement, Wamafunu, all those statements were made, and those statements were certainly not condemned by the person. Now, mention has also been made about the bringing in to train these vigilantes. Let me tell you, the invisible forces, Delta forces, all of them were brought into this country by the then candidate Nanado, current president. They were aided, financed by the president, and I can tell you they are still being aided and financed by the Flagstaff House. These are terror groups. Let no one be deceived into thinking that they are vigilantes or vigilantism. If you take the AU Convention of the Prevention of Terrorism, Prof, and I'm going to read how it describes terrorism. It describes terrorism that any act, if you look at it at Article 3 of the convention, which Ghana we are signatory to, it says that any act which is a violation of the criminal laws of a state, party, and which may endanger the life, physical integrity, or freedom of or cause serious injury or death to any person, any number of group of persons, or causes or may cause damage to the public or private property, natural resources, environmental, cultural heritage, and is calculated or intended to 1. Intimidate, put in fear, force, coerce, or induce any government today, institutions, the general public, or any segment thereof, to do or abstain from doing any act, or to adopt or abandon or particular standpoint, or to act according to certain principles. Now, let me just stop there. To intimidate or put in fear or force or coerce or induce any government, body, institution. What these people are doing is that they are not only hurting people, they are intimidating people who man this state institution. They put fear in officers who work in those institutions. So the Delta Force, the Invisible Force, the Kandahar, the Bolga Bulldogs, mention them, they are all terror groups. And these terror groups are financed and aided by the president and from the Flagstaff House. As a matter of fact, what happened in Kumasi
was an impetus to all those terror groups that they can operate with alacrity and with impunity. When we were told that they went in for nolle prosequi, and it's funny, people have attacked a court of competent jurisdiction, but for the intervention of the police and the protection of the judge would have been killed. Because the police officer, when they asked him, he said his focus and attention was to protect the judge. So, but for his protection, the judge would have been killed. Now, these people, you start the process. Now, when the process of prosecution is fraudulently procured, the outcome will be fraudulently concluded. Now, you went in and you arrested people who were nowhere near the scene. They could not be found in the video, neither could anybody testify that they were there. As a matter of fact, after that action, their leader spoke to radio stations. He granted interview and stated that they did it. That gentleman was not arrested. That gentleman who boasted about what they did in the court was not arrested. He granted interview, a known person in Kumasi. He wasn't arrested. Then you have a prosecution that goes into arresting people who they knew were nowhere near the place. They could not be seen in the video, nothing. Even circumstantial evidences could not provide a conclusive position that they were those who engaged in it. So if it takes such people to prosecute, what will be the conclusion? They will throw the thing out. Nolle prosequi doesn't mean a conclusion of a case. What it simply means is that at the material moment, you don't have enough evidence to deal with these people, so you do further investigation. I stated on this program that that was the end of that investigation. You remember what the minority leader said in Parliament, Honorable Haruna Idrisu, when he asked the president, when he had met the State of the Nation's address. Honorable Haruna told him that he should remember that he was the commander-in-chief of the Ghana Armed Forces, that he was not a commander-in-chief of Delta Forces and Invisible Forces. He told him this, as if the president was going to prove Honorable Haruna Idrisu and the minority wrong. Instead, he justified. He proved them right, that indeed I am only the commander-in-chief of not only the Ghana Armed Forces, but the Invisible and the Delta Forces. Now, Ambassador was talking about investigation of the current CID. That woman herself is a subject for investigation. Now, if a woman who herself is a subject for investigation, how can she do an independent investigation into a commission of crimes? This is a woman who was caught on tape trying to cover up crime. When she was interviewed, the position was that yes, the voice was my voice, but it was doctored. Now, doctoring anybody's voice for whatever purpose is a crime. More so, Eddie, boss. Now, the police themselves told us that they had commenced investigation into the matter to establish whether A+ had actually doctored her voice or it was not doctored. A+ said, look, I never doctored this voice. The voice is not doctored. It's the original voice, and that was the conversation I had with the woman. Now, the police investigation, Peter, was going to have two outcomes. One, to ascertain or to establish whether indeed the voice was doctored by A+ or not. And two, to establish that the voice was not doctored, it was the original and the real voice of the woman. These were the two outcomes. Doctored or not what? Doctored. Either way, there will be some consequences and repercussions. If it was established in the investigation that A+ had doctored the voice, then A+ should not be a free man. But if it was established that the voice was not doctored, then that woman is not fit to even be a CID, let alone heading the CID. Now, this investigation, per communication from the police themselves that they had commenced investigation, the president came from nowhere and made the woman the boss of the CID. Now, how can I investigate myself? As we see today, nobody in this country knows the whereabouts or the outcome of that so-called investigation. So how can such a woman investigate crimes that are committed by people who indeed are nurtured, trained, and financed by the president? How can they do that? Now, the Kandahar boys, and you know why? I would have said that it served Dr. Kolbila right. That same Dr. Kolbila, the same process, those ropes, what they did in getting Dr. Kambong out, aided by Dr. Kolbila. Dr. Kambong was the chief executive. When we lost the elections, the same Kandahar boys went and drove away Dr. Kambong. By the way, they are all from the same even region. Drove away Dr. Kambong, and Dr. Kobler brandished his MPP membership card. I'm told. Brandished that to prove to them that he was an MPP person. So they sacked Dr. Kambong, and then you are made the chief executive. What the president needed to do at that time, that the moment people were alleging that the action of the Kandahar boys in the matter of Dr. Kambong's sacking was influenced by Dr. Kolbela, the president shouldn't have appointed Dr. Kolbela as the chief executive of the Tamale Teaching Hospital. Because this rumor was there. Everybody said it was Dr. Kolbela who indeed gave money to the boys to do that to Dr. Kambong. The president actually went ahead because Dr. Kolbela was seen as an MPP card-bearing member. So today, if they are doing that to that man, I'll tell you that it serves him right. But the issue is not about a Kolbela or a Kambong. The issue is about that indisciplined recklessness and terror acts that is being perpetrated by groups that are financed, produced by the NPP. Because if they do that today, do you know what they will do tomorrow? This is just the tip of the iceberg. They have been engaged in several of such acts. Those terror groups across the country have been engaged in several of such acts. Now, those who are supposed to be the doyens and protectors of our democracy, those hypocritical and, in fact, compromised section of the Ghanaian media and the civil society groups and the clergy are in a complete state of incommunicado. As a matter of fact, they are in a deep, long slumber. And that slumber continues until, inshallah, the MPP is voted out in 2020. They are not saying anything about it. And our concerns are that as long as people engage in such act, what happens is that you give them the fuel and says you can do that. Remember, they even held, some of such groups held press conferences and threatened everybody. Let me conclude briefly on this. They killed a military officer, a major, at what's the name? Dencho Obasi. The only thing the president could do was to go to that same place and give them a scholarship. How has a scholarship got to do? I'm not saying like any other Ghanaian, they don't deserve scholarship. No. But under the circumstances, in the most barbarous manner of killing, and as I talked to you, and the family had even indicated that they were frustrated with regards to the investigation that is ongoing. The president traveled there, and the only thing he can do is to add more insults to the injury and the agony of the family and peace-loving people of this country and the military by giving them a scholarship. That is the legacy that this man will leave. President Nana Ado's administration will be remembered as the monstrous leadership that this country has ever experienced. And he's demonstrating that day by day. The only solution to stop this mess, this chaos, this anarchy, is that the good people of this country should do their possible best to boot out this super corrupt, super incompetent, super insensitive, and the most violent leadership that this country has ever had. And we must take solace and heed to the advice and admonishment that was given by people closer to Mr. Nana Ado, now the President of the Republic of Ghana. That is the only way we can salvage this country.
Thank you very much, Comrade Murtala Mohammed. Peter, please, good morning to you and all your panelists. How can a board member withdraw or transfer money from the bank without the approval from the board? Let Dr. Mensa Otabil know that Ghanaians are descending enough. Let him come out and account for his church to his church members of what he used the offering and tithes for. Again, to Nanado Baumia and those NPP who tag His Excellency John Dramani Mahama as incompetent can now truly define the word incompetence and who should be tagged as incompetent. Then and the almighty incompetent Nanado and Baumia, 7 banks have been collapsed. More jobs have been lost, all in 18 months. Incompetence indeed. Competence indeed. From Owodu Gershon, the branch communication officer of NDC Nyanya Sotrum constituency. Good morning, the staff of Radio Gold, lovely Ghanaians, and President Nanado. I thank you all for the good work you are doing. God bless you richly. That's coming from Dominion Virtuous, Ghana, Kpando. I don't know if that's the name of an individual or
or the name of a group. Let me come to you, Comrade Kwesi Pratt, on either of the issues you might want to pick. We'll call it a day.
Well, I think it's important for us all to realize that what happened in Tamale with regards to the teaching hospital and how persons believed to be members of the Kandahar force went there and drove him out and so on. I think it's important for us to realize that this could destabilize national security. And we've spoken about this on so many occasions that I do not actually know what to say. I think it's a waste of time, just sitting here and talking about it. But all the political parties, all the political parties have to realize that the formation and maintenance of such vigilante groups is not in the national interest. Indeed, it's an affront to the national constitution, which insists that nobody can raise an armed group. The national constitution is very clear on that. What surprised me is that when this Tamale incident was being discussed, the dust had virtually not settled on it. When there were reports also from the central region of NDC youth also stoning the Minister for Health because they alleged that he was not going to mention the fact that it was John Mahama who provided that facility. And that's absolutely crazy. You understand? Absolutely crazy. The NDC, the NPP had his back to the ground. People were criticizing it and so on. And all of a sudden, NDC, when people also pop up in the central region, they are doing the same in a health facility. It's incredible, So I think, look, all of us have to come to the understanding that this is not healthy and that we have to bring it to an end. I've heard many people call on the police to take action, especially the Inspector General of Police. We are wasting our time. All of us have contributed to creating the situation of fear, not just for policemen, but for public servants. We've put the fear of God in public servants to the extent that they know that you dare not cross politicians. And when they are dismissed, what do we do for them? When they stand up to do their professional jobs and so on, they are harassed and dismissed and so on, what do we do for them? We think that policemen are not human beings. Policemen are also human beings. They have wives and children to feed and so on. Until we create the conditions which make it possible for them to act professionally, they will not act professionally and it will not be their fault. Why? In this country, people in the judiciary, the chief justice and so on, they have security of tenure. They cannot be sacked by any government, theoretically. You understand? So, why can't we insist on security of tenure for the IGP? Why should every incoming government choose its own IGP? Doesn't make sense. And we are all sitting here, we've accepted it. And yet when they don't behave professionally, we complain. All of us sit here, all of us sit in the same radio stations and so on, interview politicians who boast about the number of people they've managed to put in the police service. We think that is all right. And yet, when the police don't behave professionally, we complain. We are all responsible for the situation in which the police is unable to move. When the NPP was in opposition, what did they say? They justified the formation of this group on the grounds that they could not trust the police to protect them. You understand? They said it, that they couldn't trust the police to protect them. So they went and violated the constitution, did what they did because of lack of confidence in the police as well. What do you expect the policemen to do now? Master.
You want to touch briefly on the last topic, since we still have about a couple of minutes to go.
I think we can bring the show to an end. There isn't enough time to make any meaningful comments.
Anyway, let me see if I have one or two messages to pick here. This one here says, I don't blame the New Patriotic Party because we believe in Afenyo Markins's rejoinder, but disregard Ibrahim's own. by same Joy FM, same report, with both taking loans from UT. And how much of Ibrahim loan compared to Otabel, the advisor to Nanado, and his cousin Oforiata? It is sickening how a finance minister who has been engulfed with corruption per the 2017 Auditor General's report is preaching virtue. Ibrahim has assets to account for his loan. So what about the others? Vote Mohammed Abdullahi Aziz as NDC National Zongo Caucus organizer. Prekese Kwame, aristocrat, Kaswa Old Barrier, sent that message through. Let me see if I can pick one or two more. If my internet would allow me. Let me once again extend appreciation to my panelist, Kwesi Pratt Jr., managing editor of the Insight newspaper. Ambassador Sampial is Ghana's former High Commissioner to India. And we had Professor Ninoy Douna, is a senior lecturer at the University of Ghana. And Comrade Murtala Mohammed is a former Deputy Minister for Trade and Industry and a former Member of Parliament also for the Nanton constituency in the Northern region. We have been looking at the collapse of Capital Bank and its related matters, as well as the other banks that have collapsed. We also took time to touch on the attack on the Chief Executive Officer or the acting Chief Executive Officer of the Tambali Teaching Hospital by the Kandahar boys. The strikes of health workers and solidarity and reactions, of course, from the New Patriotic Party and its and allied concerns. And unfortunately, there was just one of my panelists who managed to touch on the issue of the government of Ghana and FIFA's umpires. Now there is a resolution, I'm told, and how we are supposed to, as a country, ensure that we follow the roadmap that FIFA has given us to ensure that we get our football administration back on track. Now, I also gave you the information earlier on that it is with sad and a heavy heart, of course, that we announce the sad passing of the former United Nations General Secretary, His Excellency Dr. Musumuru Kofi Annan. He passed away, I'm told, late last night in Sweden. My name once again is Peter Bamfo. Do well to stay out of trouble and don't do what you wouldn't like your neighbors to find out. I'm out of here. God willing, Monday we'll be here again.